Welcome to Branching Out, Growing Together, the podcast that brings you inspiring stories from people ready to take bold steps, grow new opportunities, and transform their land or careers into something extraordinary. Hosted by Melanie Jones, each episode features farmers, entrepreneurs, and visionaries sharing their journeys of discovery and growth. Whether you're dreaming of starting your own farm or looking for new ways to cultivate success, you're in the right place. It's time to branch out and grow together.
On today's episode, I'm joined by father-son team Bill and John Nash of Nash Nurseries, a sixth-generation centennial farm that's pushing chestnuts from side crop to serious industry. Together, we unpack what it really takes to build a sustainable modern chestnut nursery, getting brutally honest about site selection, drainage and wind exposure, irrigation and deer pressure, and why so many problems come from rushing the planning instead of designing the system up front. We also get into how they've turned a traditional nursery into a living chestnut lab, from intercropping and diversified revenue streams to tight nursery and orchard mapping, barcoding, and documenting decades of practical knowledge before it's lost. Then we zoom into the future of chestnut propagation and products. A boutique tissue culture lab designed to produce high-quality chestnut, hazelnut, and pawpaw trees at scale, and the Treeborne value-added line that takes surplus nuts beyond the fresh market into things like dried chestnut products and even chestnut-based brews. This is a conversation about more than just growing trees. It's about generational transition, tech colliding with tradition, and why Bill and John believe chestnuts belong at the center of America's next wave of agroforestry, resilience, and rural economic growth.
Good morning, listeners. And as I mentioned in the introduction earlier, we're with Bill and John Nash from Nash Nurseries, and they're going to talk to us just a little bit about what it takes to build a chestnut and a nursery operation that can actually last, and that it's absolutely within reach of new growers if they do certain things correctly. So welcome, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Before I dive in, I wanted to thank you guys, both of you, your staff, and everyone that put on the most amazing event, tour, and dinner for the Chestnut Growers of America and Northern Nut Growers meeting last summer up at your farm. Those things don't happen by themselves, and so it was absolutely amazing not only to see your nurseries, but some of the new things that you're doing with chestnuts. And I think just want to encourage people that are newer to the industry to consider attending this meeting next summer up in Amherst, Massachusetts. But anyway, from the bottom of my heart and many others, thank you for that great event.
Thank you for attending.
Yes.
Yeah, it was super fun. Okay, well we're gonna just dive in here, and I'm gonna try to alternate the questions a little bit. So first of all, John, you're the sixth generation doing this work, and you're raising the seventh. And many of our listeners are what's considered Generation Zero. They're planting their first trees right now. So if you were starting completely from scratch today without the infrastructure that your dad and family have built, what's the first thing that you'd focus on to make sure that the farm is still around in 25 years?
I think between talking to a lot of people and a lot of excited growers and young people, younger than myself out there that are, getting into horticulture as a whole, and especially with chestnuts, the number one thing would be patience. Doesn't happen overnight. It definitely takes a decently thought out plan. You're going to make mistakes. There's going to be a lot of trial and error. And, if you can, when you make an error, you can weather the storm and not have all your eggs in one basket, proverbially, in there. You'll come out better. We're blessed here at the nursery that we have really fantastic soil. So one of the things, when you're planning out your little farm or your orchard, is do simple things, soil surveys, site surveys, figure that kind of stuff out. What's your drainage like? Your climate, where are you located? Are you planting in frost pockets? Are you planting up on a hill? And then down the road, figure out irrigation. You can run a lot of drip irrigation from a simple house pump, house well pump. Or if you're going to plan on, doing, buckets and buckets or water trucks, that you got to be out there doing it regularly. So, I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, but, with my kids that wanted to, they harvest a chestnut and then Luke takes it and plants it in the greenhouse in a pot, and he comes back a week later and he doesn't understand why it hasn't sprouted yet. And I try to talk to him. Well, it needs to vernalize and go through winter and blah 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 blah. And he just is like, I want a tree and I want it right now.
I wonder if Bill saw a little bit of that in you at one point.
Well, I think you always see that in the younger generation, and what Jonathan had just said, get your ducks in a row. I think one of the things we always advise to people who are thinking about this, talk to a lot of folks. Join some of these organizations and talk to some of the folks, some of the growers that have been in it for years. And you can apply that to what you have yourself there. So planning, patience. I think that's one of the most important things. We have too many people, or there are a lot of folks that they want to do it. They want to do it right now. Let's get those trees in the ground. We'll worry about water. We'll worry about deer browse. We'll worry about weeds later. Well, that's a poor way to start, and you're kind of setting yourself up for failure unless you make some good plans.
Yes, yeah, that's for sure. Can you remember, like, what were some of the big decisions that you had to make early on that kind of set the trajectory of where Nash Nursery is today? Like, was it scary or felt risky when you started?
Well, it was a little bit of that, but certainly a great deal of excitement, which I'm sure a lot of folks today are thinking about planning out. A great deal of excitement. Watering, care, spacing, weed control, that type of thing.
Yeah.
You have to think about and how you're going to do it. And today, deer control, deer are much more of a problem than they used to be.
Huh, that's interesting. I thought they were always a problem, but I guess you could see an increase in it depending on where you are and everything. But yeah, that's absolutely. I mean, it sounds like you didn't build a playbook overnight. It was one season at a time, one decision at a time. And I guess when you look at the current wave of growers, what convinces you that somebody starting small today can grow and be successful?
I mean, I would say, like from the nursery aspect of growing fruit and nut trees, that when like I finished at Michigan State in landscape architecture and hort in like 2010, in the middle of the whatever Great Recession, and if we would have had the funds then to be planting and growing stuff for, say, a pandemic 10 years later when everyone's going to be home and want to be going into farming their own stuff, growing their own produce and all that, like that would have been brilliant, but we didn't. So
Yes.
Being able to adapt and change along the way, at that point in time, like for us as a nursery, one of our biggest selling crops was a Colorado blue spruce for landscape industry. Well, there's the needle cast disease in Michigan now that's like completely wiped them out. So not planting all of the exact same thing all at once. So, like with the chestnuts and growing like that, depending on starting your orchard, maybe not with 2,000 trees all at once. Like, yes, I want to sell you 2,000 trees all at once, but if you don't have the means to grow them, you don't have necessarily total projected market revenue streams to move that many, that's something to contemplate. So start, on a little bit smaller scale, or do some, if it's going to take you 10 to 15 years to get nuts and productivity. We have some growers here in Michigan that were doing Christmas trees in between, so they were trying to make another revenue stream for their fields. Intercropping, we had landscape trees and ornamental trees planted amongst our original chestnut orchards that we grew, moved out, and now it's all chestnut trees.
Yeah, that's great. I think I love that idea. We have a lot of people come here to learn about chestnut farming, and it's the same thing we tell them. We'd love to sell them lots and lots of trees, but especially people that are new to farming, there's a lot to learn, and it's hard work. When we got started, we kind of thought it was a science, which it is to an extent, but it's also an art form because of all the things that are thrown at you every single year, and they seem to be different every single year. Uh, so yeah, that's a great summary that the playbook does evolve, but it's not like you start with a playbook and that's it forever. It's continuous. Um, so John, you work alongside your dad most days, and we have a lot of people in the industry that are husband and wives or adult children and their parents who are trying to learn how to pull things into the orchard together. So it's like having to navigate old school wisdom versus the new school tools and the ideas that you brought back from Michigan State. How do you two integrate some of the newer ideas and the old traditional wisdom that both are equally important?
I think it's a lot of back and forth. I don't want to say bickering because that's what old couples do. That's not what a father and son do. We just go back and forth with ideas. But growing up out here, I was always, my mom ran the like retail sales area here at the nursery, and so I was always out and around with her. My dad would be back in the greenhouses and out in the orchards, and go back on tractors, go back, help plant stuff. And then throughout school, would work out here. My friends would come out here and work during high school. I eventually kind of became like lead crew, and in charge of, because I learned the ins and outs of everything. But, it was more so my father would be like, hey, we need to go do this. And I would say, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I'll let you drive the tractor. Okay, cool. I'll go. I don't want to go and graft trees. I'll let you play with these sharp knives. Okay, well, sure, that sounds interesting. Maybe I'll come along. So,
That's
my
great.
kids, I have a 7 and 10-year-old right now, and they both love coming out to the nursery. And all they do is run around, and during the growing season and harvest season, they eat the fruits all over the property, and play with the dogs, play with the cats, wait on a customer or two here and there, or at least help. But getting them involved, I was headed them out, harvesting chestnuts in the fall. So I turned Luke and Lexi loose, and told them I'd give them $1 a pound for every pound they harvested and floated. They couldn't just bring me any old junk. So they were very excited with that, and bought a Lego set with their money. And so getting
That's
involved
so
like
great.
that definitely was big for me. And then trying to get Luke and Lex out here and get them going. And
Yeah. And Bill, did you have a desire for John to be really involved in the business, or did you kind of let it unfold with some of your creative encouragement with knives and such?
Well, actually, both. When you trying to bring that next generation on, you kind of have to lead them, coax them, make it enjoyable. You can't push. You
Yeah.
start pushing hard, they're going to push back. So Jonathan said we would, pay for a certain job. So he started learning the value of $1 and found out that, well, if I work, I make money, then I have money to spend. I can buy what I want.
Yeah.
So teaches that next generation some very valuable life skills.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Can you think of a time when John pushed for something new that you were pretty sure wouldn't work, and maybe it actually turned out well?
Well, he's been very good. That's one of the things I've been so pleased about, is that he's been able to bring in a lot of the newer technology, particularly when we started barcoding and computerizing inventory and everything, because in years past, it always had just been up here in my head, and
Yeah.
it simply got too much, and information needed to be passed around.
Yeah.
Perhaps if the only thing I can say about that, which I think is very true with lot of generations. It's that the younger generation wants to push a little more faster, and the older generation is saying, "Hold back, let's take a look at it."
Yes.
But I think we've worked that out exceedingly well.
Yeah,
I can tell you one, and you said the barcoding thing. It started when I wanted to start trying to barcode plant material, and then also being able to field and plot maps at orchards and that kind of stuff, and be able to go out and tag them. I bought with my own money a old UPS thermal printer off eBay to try to see if I could start tagging and printing on tags. And so, years later, we have a very fancy high-tech printer that we can, print and label, and they're, weather resistant, and everything's mapped, everything's in spreadsheets, everything's in the computer. So any employee can pull up any tree anywhere, when they're on the property or even at home, I can do that. So that's
fantastic.
Yeah,
and I love that part that you took your own money and invested it to try something. I mean, that's one of the things that's so fascinating about farming is that ability to explore and create, but at the same time, I remember you telling me, John, about, your dad would be out driving around with an employee and just sharing the knowledge, and the knowledge is up in Bill's head. So how do we get it out of there?
Yeah, that has been a process, and I mean, it continues to be a process because, when you're dealing with staff, or if you're dealing with, little kids, they may not need to hear the entire scientific reasoning on why we're wanting to do something today. So that comes into trying to give good instructions. And then also we're using, a couple scheduling apps now, and that we can try to pull everything out of his brain and get it in writing to develop like our IPMs and develop pesticide regimens and all that kind of stuff. And, from harvesting schedules, all that, trying to get it all. So if I'm not around and he's not around, that somebody can see, on the calendar coming up in September, I need to spray for chestnut weevil, or we need to, get this order pulled for a customer. So that's been.
No, it's so fascinating to hear that. I wanted to go back to the past a little bit and first ask Bill about how things got started with Dr. Fulbright, who's legendary in the chestnut industry. But you didn't start with chestnuts, right? That wasn't the key first foundational product, was it?
No, I think he was doing some wheat at the time, and certainly American chestnuts. He was interested in that. Organization here in Michigan called the Michigan Nut and Fruit Growers Association. That was the first group here in Michigan back in the early 50s. My father was active in that. I became active and still am active in that group, and it's a nice group. We lost our MSU professor at that time. He retired, and we needed someone else to kind of take over and be our MSU contact. And had known Dennis for a while, and so I asked him if he would be willing to step in and take over. At that point in time, he wasn't a full professor. He was just an associate professor. And the powers that be didn't look too highly upon professors, associate professors, MSU working with amateur groups. And we were an amateur group back then. Well, a couple of years, he got his full professorship and agreed to come in with the Michigan Nut Growers. And sort of the rest is history, because he started looking more towards nut production in chestnuts and later in pawpaws, and really pushed the program along. And we certainly here in Michigan owe a great debt of gratitude to him. We wouldn't have an industry in here if it hadn't been for Dennis.
Absolutely. And then I think it's interesting that then, John, you're at Michigan State and you're learning from Dr. Fulbright through your educational process. And we don't have time to go into all the great things related to that. But for a grower who might be terrified about making a mistake and let's say they're investing $20,000 in, whatever, and they don't want to lose it and kill their investment. So are there one or two lab lessons about disease, for example, that you wish you understood before you put the shovel in the ground, or that they should understand before they put the shovel in the ground is more accurate?
I think, if I were to tell anyone that's wanting to get into the chestnuts or, any sort of fruit or nut, any sort of crop that you're wanting to grow for a commercial scale, is, learn by listening to podcasts, watching some online videos. Now, not everything online is always 100% correct.
Totally.
But, join some of the group and learn for what some of your pests and problems can be. So in the best scenario, you can catch it before there's anything wrong, right? Like Michigan, we're now lifting our gall wasp ban for nursery stock of chestnut trees because gall wasps are here and they're, it's not worth it anymore. Mm-hmm. So is it going to be a problem? Possibly. The guys on the west side of the state have had it. Their trees have recovered. They fought it. They're moving on, right? So like it's here. They recognized it, got ahead of it a little bit. And we can, spray for it or do whatever we need to try to control it, and just be vigilant out there and looking over your orchard or baby little trees ahead of time.
Yeah, that's great. And I know we've talked offline about the mission right now, Chestnut Growers of America, to take more of a leadership role in bringing resources and education to growers. And that's just exactly right. Stay connected to a group like that. Get out and talk to people that are actually doing it. Like you've said, it makes all the difference in the world, because if you just kind of keep your head in the sand, you'll never know that these issues are happening, and you need to. Both of you have said things like that disease problems are actually management and observation problems. So for a brand new grower, what does paying attention early actually look like? Is it something, do you guys spend week to week or month to month? How often are you out in your orchards looking for issues, not just with chestnuts, but any of your products?
I think that can vary based on the crop and based on our availability of time.
Yeah.
But, realistically, I would say, we're doing, we're lucky. All of our orchards are on our singular piece of property. And so my father and I, he will take he'll run the dogs on the daily. And, he'll drive through the orchards. He'll drive through the nursery stock and just is doing a general one-over as he goes. If I'm going back, I'll go back on, Mondays and like Wednesday mornings for just to like kind of check up on staff and see what they've gotten accomplished, what we need to do, tasks we need to do. And I give kind of a one-over. Now, like to go a full-blown in-depth, with a fine-tooth comb into the orchards and stuff, I would say we probably are doing that, seasonally. I don't think we spend, no, again, I wouldn't say our orchards are probably the most clean and most beautiful chestnut orchards out there, but, they're pretty disease-free and they're producing. So
no, they are beautiful, but yeah, that's just helpful to give a sense of timing. Okay, I want to switch topics to some of the newer things. So at the CGA event, you all shared a package of Treeborne products of dried chestnuts. So what's the vantage point of seeing these nuts kind of coming down the line and then have this vision that they're going to turn into something else? Just talk a little bit about Treeborne and what that is and where it's going would maybe be the best way to do that.
So we started Treeborne, and this was with Dr. Fulbright and a couple other, Roger Blackwell, mm-hmm. and a couple other people, growers in the state. And it was effectively, we have CGI, which is the Chestnut Growers Inc., and they are moving fresh market chestnuts, and that is like their avenue for that. And so we kind of started Treeborne as what could we do with value added secondary products with the idea that eventually we're going to have more chestnuts than we can sell fresh market. We're going to need to do something with them and start trying to develop some, inroads with some vendors and whatnot for places to sell the chestnut chips, which are, sliced roasted chestnut chips, dehydrated basically.
Yeah.
Milling flour. I know like Greg and Amy down at Route 9 or Route 9 are doing flour as well now. And obviously it's a big thing in Europe and Asia. So, just trying to develop some of that for what can we do realistically with Midwest grown chestnuts if we can't sell them all fresh market, is to be able to do, something with them down the road.
Yeah. It was that like collaboration between you two, and then I guess with Roger Blackwell and some others, of just like where to start and how to launch that.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, you can say it started over a beer, because that was like one of the first things was that we had the peeler. So we're doing frozen peeled, and then we're like, well, now what can we do with them? And we sliced them and roasted them, and we're like, man, this would really make a good nut brown ale. And so we took some of the roasted chestnut chips to several local breweries around Michigan. And this was, pre-pandemic, before everything kind of, when the micro brew was, bursting onto the scene. And we had, quite a few vendors in Michigan, like really excited about doing a chestnut brown ale, especially a seasonal beer. So that was the kind of aha moment that, maybe we can do something with these. So
it's we just had a blog came out. It was really more thought provoking, but it was what some other industries are doing with what's left on the orchard floor, with the burrs and the shells and the nutrients that are in it and skincare products and all that. And we don't have the answer to that right now, but the idea is to get people thinking, like, just there. It's a great opportunity right now in this industry. So I love that the leadership that y'all have taken and the product. So I guess the super, super cool thing that I loved seeing at your place last summer was your tissue culture trailer. And so talk to us just a little bit about what's going on there with your tissue culture project. I know it's got phases and it's still, unfolding, but what's the vision?
Well, the vision is that we built it and set it up, and this has been years in the making and researching. And basically, it was 2020 or 2000. I don't know, right around the pandemic, right around 2020, when Mario Mandojando, Michigan State researcher and our good friend, was starting to bring some of the chestnut protocol tissue culture stuff to Michigan State and actually getting success with it. And we were starting to propagate and doing some of that with, in the lab there. And it was like, and this is the Euro hybrids. And it was working. And so in 2021, we lined out a first batch, if you will, from a Petri dish babies in the orchards at our orchard, and then I think 5 other ones around the state, just to test them. And so, from being started in from the, stage 3 division to rooting to in the ground a year later, to now fast forward to 2025, the trees are, 4 to 5 inch caliper and producing in 5 years. So just being able to see that and being able to know that we're selecting the cultivars that are, more disease resistant and more, proven to produce in our area. And if they're true to root, we don't have to graft them. So that was kind of our basis for wanting to be able to do it here. And then working with a company to develop a small boutique, like let's say boutique style tissue culture lab, where we don't have to do 1 million trees for a run. We can do 5 to 10,000, and we can get those going, and then rotate it from chestnuts to hazelnuts to pawpaws, and do some of these other kind of boutique crops that don't have TC necessarily available in the United States or at all. So that was kind of our line of thought on developing that, and getting some people involved with it to want to help, want to be a part of it, and then getting the research done and the protocol set up to be able to do that. So yes, right now it's sitting there. Electricity and everything is getting hooked up finally. So yeah, it's been 4 or 5 years in the making for doing that. And
it really upgrades you from the traditional nursery, Nash nursery, that's been in the family for so long, to a science situation, right? I mean, that's thrilling.
Well, it's the wave of the future. So many things are being produced by tissue culture.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I'm probably most pleased about, in particular, because Jonathan's kind of taken the lead on this. And we've been to Spain and consulted and worked with the research over there, because that's how Europe produces a lot of trees. Much more rapid way of producing a tree that's very strong and healthy, grows faster, and bears quicker.
Yeah.
So the question is, why wouldn't we do this? Of course.
It sounds magical, which in some ways it is, but it's not magic. There's still challenges with it, right? Like you guys have to continue to work through what you're creating there.
The process.
Yep.
Yeah, it's high tech. It's crazy. One of going back to when I was at State, and this was like just coming on board. Hartman's Plants over on the west side of Michigan does a ton of blueberries, and so we went over there, met him, and he was doing it, and he was like, "It's not rocket science, guys." He's like, and he didn't have a multi-million-dollar laboratory, where I'd been to some of the like proven winners. I've toured their labs, and it's multi-million-dollar, completely white walls. Everybody's like, wow, this isn't anything we could ever envision for a chestnut industry, because no one's going to be able to front that kind of money for it. So visiting Hartman's and seeing that he's doing blueberries basically in a clean room, but it was like a garage, like it was an old looked like an old garage. So he's doing it in there, and like if you get the protocol figured out and you get the conditions correct, like we can do it. So that was really our kind of like aha moment when growing up, like why can't we do this with something that hasn't been done? And our nursery suppliers, we ask them to what would they entertain if we got the protocol? What would they entertain? These are our organ suppliers, and they would want to do 200,000 trees with guaranteed payment. And they aren't even going to say that it's going to work. They're like, we are going to do a run of 200,000 for each cultivar, and it's like, nobody's going to do that.
No. For the grower that's newer, does this change their journey to think if they were able to purchase the tissue culture trees, or not really?
You're going to answer?
Yes, I think absolutely. Chestnuts have been traditionally produced by grafting, and anyone who has grafted certainly chestnuts realize there's definitely some problems there. Compatibility, even some problems out in the field. There's no uniform clonal rootstock like for apples, so that it's a little bit more of a gamble when you start doing with grafted chestnuts, and plus, there aren't many people producing those anymore. There never were too many that were actually producing grafted chestnuts. Fowler Nursery there in California, and they don't do that anymore. Now, so we're looking at that, and we tried some hazelnut tissue culture, We bought some little stage 2 and stage 3 tissue culture, 1,500 little X plants from California, and built a kind of a crude little fog chamber without a great deal of investment in one of the corners of the greenhouse, and had really had good success. Learned a lot, but it took a little bit of that mystery out of it, that high-tech, super scientific laboratory that you have to have everything state of the art with an enormous investment to do this. And so after seeing the success that we had with that, I'm thinking, well, maybe we could do this on a little bigger scale, but still on a much smaller scale than what some of the very large labs.
Yeah, right. Well, you got to have the buyers too of the trees once you get them going. Okay, well, that's fascinating, and I just for our audience, stay tuned to this work because it really is groundbreaking and exciting and all that. So I know, John, I guess both of you consult on orchard designs all over the country, right? And so when you walk into a farm that's kind of struggling, what are the patterns that you see over and over that maybe would help our listeners that are newer to not repeat?
Just went and did a consult last Monday, and it was snowing and really gross here in Michigan for it. And I was walking around with the homeowner out on her property, and she's like, "What's wrong with this tree? What's wrong with this tree? What's wrong with this tree?" And it was one of those, like, that back to what I mentioned, like your site selection. There was a home that yes, they bought. I think they had 10 acres, but she was growing peaches and plums and nectarines, and it's an old soybean field, so it's flat, it's clay, poor drainage, wide open to westerly winds, where all those stone fruits in Michigan are not the most hardy in where we're at in central Michigan. So a lot of things, if I go to sites and see struggling stuff, most of the time it's due to that initial site selection for stuff. Yeah. They're like, I have the property, I'm putting it on it no matter what. And a lot of the issues stem from that. Now, obviously you get into care and, disease and stuff once your orchard is up and, trying, but a lot of the stuff stems just from poor site selection to begin with.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? It really is like building a house or something. You got to get that part right. So if there's a person listening here and they're not from agriculture, they don't have a family farm, what are the learnable skills that they should maybe focus on first? Learning what you just talked about?
So, I mean, there's a lot of, some general resources out there. So like when I go to consult, I'll just pull up the U.S. topographical maps. So I can kind of get that. I went through back in the 60s and 70s and did soil surveys.
Yeah, even before.
Or even before that. Mm-hmm. So I can have kind of an idea of what I'm walking into. So I can be like, okay, they probably have clay, or they probably are, it's a new dozed build and they've lost all the good nutrients of the topsoil. They, sculpt all that away. I would recommend somebody to do the simplest thing of digging like a 1 by 1 by 1 hole and filling it with water and counting how long it takes to drain. Like that can give you some good idea of, chestnuts hate sitting in water. How long did it take for this, my 1 by 1 by 1 hole to drain? The water's still there 3 days later. Probably not a great site for chestnuts.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think one of the reasons that we launched United Chestnuts, and it's evolving into a learning and development hub, is to capture information like this for the new growers. And some of it is going to be captured as co-creators, say with the Nashes, and that we have concrete resources available, because although you can go really deep on education, some of these things are not that complicated as long as you know what to look for. So I know I've talked to you about this before. I appreciate your support in this. If someone's here and they're going, this is just all over my head, what would you tell them about what's exactly possible? I mean, you talk about patience, right? Hard work and just getting connected. Like, is there more to it than that?
Well, it's a process. It's a learning experience. We always we'll have a number of different people that want to, of course, plant not only just chestnuts but other orchards and different. And it's always nice to deal with somebody that already has a background in it. But however, the majority of people do not.
Yeah.
We got started with chestnuts and with the colossal variety because that was the only variety that was available out of California, Fowler Nursery. For them, that was a very small little portion of their nursery. They did probably maybe 15,000 trees a year, which for them was a drop in the bucket because they did the almonds and a lot of the other pistachios and nuts and walnuts by the hundreds of thousands. One of the reasons they got out of that business is because they started shipping, of course, chestnuts to Michigan. And Dennis was one of the ones that was behind this and to get to try to get some grafted trees out there, some cultivars. Anyways, some of the growers that received some of the trees that were complaining that they weren't doing well. So I remember one situation, one of the persons from Fowler Nursery came to Michigan, and we met him and went around and looked at some of these plantings. And there was this one planting that the gentleman was complaining that the trees aren't growing. They just aren't growing. So we went out there and looked at them, and it's like, well, the reason they aren't growing is that they're trying, but every time they put a new leaf out, a deer eats it. So there was no foliage on these trees, and so that just shows you that the lack of experience of the growers. They're assuming something was wrong with the tree, and obviously it was their management that was doing that.
That's a great story. It's powerful and it's so right, and it just illustrates. It could be 1,000 different things, but that's a real good one. I have this question, and you could both answer. If some of the 7th generation Nashes listens back to this conversation in 2075, what do each of you hope that you got right during this stage of your chestnut story? Because the story is changing with the tissue culture and the Treeborne and all that. What do you hope they'll say about you guys and your work right now?
I hope that Luke and Lexi, if you're listening in 50 years from now, I'm still around. I can listen to it as well. But more so that hopefully the industry in the U.S. as a whole has bloomed and blossomed. And that we always, I've always told them that, Americans were 5 generations out on knowing what a chestnut is. And that I tell Luke and Lexi that, Dad's doing all this extra work, and it's probably not necessarily even for you guys. Like, I'm hoping that, it's for your grandkids down the road that it becomes a staple back in their diet, right? Now, that's like the crazy huge grand picture. And that, we work with the American Chestnut Foundation and get American chestnut trees back out in the woods and all this kind of great, beautiful stuff. Realistically, I hope that they listen and they say, I actually am tired of eating chestnuts because I have them all the time, and I have to work with chestnuts so much that I'm glad Dad planted all these. I'm glad there's so many people, but I'm tired of them.
You'll get another child to take over then.
Right, yeah.
How about you, Bill?
Oh, I think you can look back at the apple industry, the citrus industry, how they've evolved from the first plantings and now being such a major crop and producing so much healthy fruit and nuts for the population and creating so many jobs and spin-offs. really a boost to the economy. So,
Yeah, for
and
sure. And for planting more trees to help with climate and all that kind of stuff too, you know, our soil. Um, so to wrap up, just I want to give you the opportunity if there's anything that you can think of you'd like to mention or uh, words of advice to people listening to this.
Do you have any pearls of wisdom?
well, just that it's a process. Don't get discouraged and try to learn as much as possible before you get out there and start planting all your trees. Make sure, as the old adage goes, make sure you've got all your ducks in a row so that you're more certain that you can have success and that you will have success.
Yeah, that's good. I would like to say I met you a number of years ago at an event, and you were just all so kind and encouraging. Yeah, just keep doing trial and error and work hard and be patient. So, just another reason to get out and meet one another and let help this industry grow together.
Exactly.
I think I would piggyback on that. That we are not a big enough industry that everyone needs to be their own kingdom. You know, we're a bunch of tiny little, blocks out here, and we, working together, learning from each other, introducing some, as we mentioned, some new school technology, whether it's tissue culture trees, whether it's orchard management, whether it's, drone spraying, or
Sales and marketing, sales and marketing.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. A new website,
Mm-hmm.
here and there. There's a lot of potential for chestnuts as a whole. There's a lot of potential for a lot more diversified crops in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Learning from some, the old school talent that definitely, paved the way for some of us, and trying to definitely keep an open mind about it and not get hung up on the negative. And because
I
you
agree.
will have frost, you will have disease, you will have pests,
You will have deer. Yes, you will.
you will have death in your orchard. This always, it will happen.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you guys so much. I encourage everybody to go to nashnurseries.com. New website in the works. It's looking fantastic. And we'll put a lot of notes in the blog because you've shared some great content. But thank you. Thank you both. Now you can get back outside.
It's snowing again. I don't want to.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Branching Out, Growing Together. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe for more inspiring stories and expert tips. Join us next time and keep branching out.